The Parsha, this coming Shabbos, is the Parsha of Shlach, where the episode of the Meraglim is recorded in the Torah. As we well know, the Haftarah of Shlach is from the Sefer Yeshua, the second parak, also focusing on the episode of the Meraglim. The Mefarshim are very concerned about the distinctions between the two episodes of the Meraglim. Briefly, let's point out something very striking. Again, already accentuated by many Mefarshim. In the Psukim in this week's Parsha of Shlach, there's one verb that occurs and recurs many, many times. And essentially that verb really captures what the essence of the mission was all about. What was their mandate? The verb the Torah uses is the expression found approximately 12 times in Pasuk Zayin, the very beginning of the parak, parak Gimel, Vayishlach osa Moshe lasur es eretz Canaan, similar to the word that's used today in modern Hebrew tayar, that describes a tourist, but that language occurs and recurs many, many times. The Torah uses it again and again. And in the middle, Vayoshuvu mitur haaretz miketz 40 yom, and a bit later, Vayotziu dibas haaretz asher toru osa haaretz asher avarnu ba lasur osa. What's the nature of that verb, of that verbal form that the Torah utilizes again and again? And this, of course, is in marked contradistinction to a verb that's used in the Haftarah, namely the Psukim describing the episode of the Meraglim in Sefer Yeshua. There, the Nabi uses a different verbal form. Namely, there the Torah tells us, Lachpor es haaretz. The Nabi rather says, Lachpor es haaretz. It's used twice, in Pasuk Beis and again Pasuk Gimel. Vayishlach melech Yericho al Rachav Lemor, Hotzihu anashim aboy melayich asher bo leveisech, ki lachpor es haaretz kol haaretz bo. What's the distinction between these two terms, Lachpor used in Sefer Yeshua, and Lasur found here in Parsha Shlach? The answer lies in an examination of the two texts. If one examines the text of Shlach, there the intention clearly of Moshe Rabbeinu, when he sent 12 Nesiim, 12 princes, he did not send 12 military career scouts, if you will, but 12 princes, heads of tribes, and their function was, in a 40-day excursion, to see the beauty of Eretz Yisrael, to examine its topography, and report back a glowing and favorable report that in effect would generate excitement and simcha with Klal Yisrael. So they should in effect want to enter Eretz Yisrael with great buoyancy and joy. Of course they came back with a report that cast a pall on Eretz Yisrael, and as a result the tragedy, of course, of 40 years wandering in the desert was the midah keneged midah that Hashem punished us with. The language Lotur indicates not a military mission, but rather a mission of an ethical, moral nature, to more or less confirm that which Hashem already told us in Tanakh, that Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Zavas Challah B'Dvash, a land flowing with milk and honey. On the other hand, in Sefer Yeshua, the language Lachpor is of a military nature, military objectives. It's a mandate designed to somehow find a way where we'll know what the Achilles heel of the enemy is, so we can enter the land and conquer it strategically in the easiest way. Lachpor means to dig under for information, spies. Of course, the distinction being that in Shlach, unfortunately, it ended in the debacle. In Sefer Yeshua, of course, there we have a buoyancy, both on the part of the Meraglim and on the part of Rachav, recognizing the Yad Hashem and how the Yad Hashem can glide us into Eretz Yisrael, as it were. Mashenkin in Shlach, there if you examine the language, you'll also notice some other transformation, which is very striking. The language of the Psukim there begin, Moshe Rabbeinu tells them, Alu ze b'negev alisem esahar, go up, ascend, and a little bit later as well, we see again the language of Aliyah that's constantly used in the context of the original Psukim, the initial Psukim, but then suddenly, with their unfavorable report that casts a pall on the entire mission, the Torah then switches language, and we begin to see, number one, a description of the Nephilim, Bnei Anok Min HaNephilim, the idea of Nephila, of Yerida, of falling, of rejection, and they begin to cry. The Tisha B'Av the Chazal speak of, and Moshe Rabbeinu as well, and Aaron reacts similarly. Vayipal Moshe v'Aaron, and the Torah again tells us a bit later, one tefillah after the next, and of course the punishment that was meted out. The language of tefillah becomes the overarching and overwhelming theme of the day. We go from aliyah to nefillah. And there's the distinction between the two episodes, besides the fact that here in Yoshua it's clandestine cheresh, here it's open, besides the fact that here we have 12 Nesiim and there we have 2 anonymous meraglim, beside the fact that the objectives are totally different, markedly different, but the primary distinction lies in the kind of attitude that one has towards Eretz Yisrael. Here the attitude was, as the Ramban writes, an attitude of, yes, Zavas Chalav Udvash, but, Efes, that according to the Ramban, in that word lies the Chet. Mashen Ken Yoshua, a buoyancy that basically describes the entire trip of the Meraglim, and as a result, the result of course was Kibush Haaretz, conquering Eretz Yisrael, in contradistinction to the unfortunate tragedy of the Meraglim. And perhaps we can learn from here a very significant lesson. If one wants to appreciate Eretz Yisrael, one has to come to Eretz Yisrael with a positive, optimistic kind of approach, recognizing the virtues of Eretz Yisrael, but it's not going to happen overnight. Eretz Yisrael, the Gemara says, Niknes b'Yisurim, is acquired not with a, shall we say, felicity and facility, but one has to nurture and cultivate a love for Eretz Yisrael, but ultimately everything depends, what is our attitude towards going Eretz Yisrael? Do we recognize it as a matana from the Ribbon Shalom? Do we see the Yad Hashem guiding and navigating Eretz Yisrael and navigating the shoals of Eretz Yisrael? If we view it that way, then as Yoshua and Kalev indicated, Olo nalev yarash nerosa ki yochel nuchala. Unfortunately, the Meraglim did not do that, and their aliyah became in the tefillah. In marked contrast to Yoshua, where we have 2 Meraglim who have a buoyancy and an amunah and bitachon and Hashem, which of course is also confirmed by Rachav. As a result, they tell Yoshua, Ki nasan Hashem b'yadeinu es kol haaretz, v'gam namogu kol yoshvei haaretz mipaneinu. Halavai, that our attitude to Eretz Yisrael should be an upbeat, buoyant, positive one. And if we look at Eretz Yisrael that way, we'll see the simcha of it, and the beauty of it, and the realization that we indeed can come to an Eretz Zavas Chalav Udvash.